So you've been buried alive. We're not going to lie to you. Things aren't looking great right now. How you've gotten here doesn't really matter, but luckily you found this video instead of calling for help. The prognosis for people who are buried alive hasn't always been too good, but a small percentage have been able to make it back to the land of the living. Follow these instructions and, with a bit of luck, you could be among them. Probably. Maybe. Don't panic. First things first, calm the heck down. Yeah, you're in a pretty bad situation, and it's probably fair to assume you're in for a prolonged and agonizing trip to Ghostville, but that's no reason to have a panic attack, is it?
Ah! What are you doing?
Oh, Jack!
What was that?
Sorry.
Listen to the experts on this one. Recognize what's happening, write it out, and focus on confronting what's happening to you. You'll never get anywhere if you freak out, so grab your copy of The Hitchhiker's Guide to an Underground Death, and remember, don't panic. Feel around. What you've been buried in is likely to vary depending on why you've been buried. But let's assume this was down to some medical mishap rather than your evil stepchild. Don't get your hopes up. You probably haven't been buried with anything particularly useful. But you never know. Have a feel around and see what you can find. Since coffins are tiny, this should be easy. Buried wearing a belt? The buckle could be useful as a hard metallic tool. Check your pockets and shoes and everywhere else. Anything from cufflinks to steel-toed shoes could end up being helpful. If, for some astronomically unlikely reason, you've been buried with your phone, thank your lucky stars and get calling. Even with no signal, emergency numbers like 911 or 112 can sometimes be picked up by any nearby cell tower. Don't rule anything out. Freedom Tap. This ought to be the first thing you try. With whatever you can get a hold of, or your own fists if there's nothing at hand, start tapping the Morse code for SOS on the lid of the coffin. It's 3 short taps, 3 long taps, and 3 short taps.
It's Morse code.
What are they saying?
They're saying, get me the out of here.
The chances that you're going to be hurt are almost unspeakably low, but there's always the chance you haven't been buried yet, or that you've been buried in a shallow grave. Shallow breaths. If you follow directions, you're not panicking at this point. The biggest danger in your current circumstance is a lack of air. Popular science theorizes that a healthy adult might have around 5.5 hours worth of breathable air available. Just how long you'll last depends largely on the size of the coffin, your own size, and how many of those panic attacks you had before you finally calmed down. Break free. If knocking SOS hasn't helped, and you're pretty sure no one's coming to save you, it might be time to do something drastic. To dig yourself out, you're going to have to break through the coffin's lid. If it's made of steel, you're dead. If it's made of cardboard, you're golden. Grab a tool if you can and start attacking. If you can break the lid, start scraping your way out. This all might sound drastic, and it is, but people have survived this way before. In 2013, a man in Brazil dug himself out of his own grave after being injured in a fight. Get lucky. So how did the people who survived actually make it out? Most of the time, it all comes down to having the right kind of luck. In one instance, a 3-year-old boy was rescued from his burial during the Irish potato famine after a gravedigger struck his legs, causing him to cry out in pain. In 1915, an American woman was saved from premature burial after her sister asked to open the coffin to see her one last time. If it happens to you, your best chance is to hope that someone on the surface intervenes in some way.
That coffin's not going to open itself.
Plan ahead. If you're like any rational human being, you're terrified of being buried alive.
Get in the hole, Murph.
Dennis, get in the hole.
Honey.
But there are always a few precautions you can take to give yourself the best odds. Having a few tools could be really useful while you're down there, right? Well, it can never hurt to throw a clause into your will demanding that you're buried with a few choice items. You can't go wrong with a phone, knife, flashlight, and multi-tool, and perhaps a small shovel. And you can just ignore the strange looks that you're going to get from your friends and family when you ask for all this. When you dig yourself out of your own grave, you'll be the one laughing. Probably like a maniac. Safety first. But let's say you're scared enough of a premature burial to warrant actually taking precautions to prevent it from happening. You're going to want to do it in the most spectacular, downright ridiculous way you possibly can, right? Of course you are. Well, that's where the safety coffin comes in. The concept is simple. Each coffin is specifically designed to allow the buried to call for help if they regain consciousness after burial, utilizing everything from bells to signal flags. A more modern version allows you to do the same with the simple push of a button. Invest in one of these and you'll rest easy for the rest of your life, and beyond. Get used to it. With all this in mind, we feel it's important to stress one thing here. You're almost definitely not going to survive being buried alive. Alan R. Leff of the University of Chicago explained to Popular Science that, in all likelihood, there's nothing someone buried alive can do. Once you're in there, you're in there. Over the course of recorded history, only a handful of people have ever come out of the grave alive, and half of the old-timey ones are probably legends anyway. But hey, if it does happen to you, good luck. You're gonna need it. Thanks for watching. Click the grunge icon to subscribe to our YouTube channel, plus check out all this cool stuff we know you'll love too.